All right, let's go. What's good, Knicks Nation? Welcome to another Game of the Week preview. Of course, we have to get ready for this in-season tournament, and who better to help me break this thing down than Rohan. You can go find him over at the Yito Step podcast, covering the Milwaukee Bucks. But before we get into asking Rohan how he's doing and breaking down this game, guys, you know what you got to do. You got to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. You got to share these links to all your family members and friends. And also, you got to support the channel by supporting our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match. All right, let's get ready for this game. It's tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. on TNT. Rohan, how are you feeling about tomorrow? Are you excited?
I'm excited. It's the first ever. I mean, we'll have some games today on Monday, but it'll be the first ever game in franchise history for the Knicks and Bucks in the knockout stage of the in-season tournament. I'm one of the people who, when thinking about the in-season tournament, I know there's been a lot of discourse about, oh, is it worth it? Is it going to be fun? I think it's fun. Like, why not try something? Why not have some fun? These games were going to happen anyway. They're part of the regular season. They were going to happen anyway. Why not try to make it more exciting? Why not try to add some more like value to it? Try to add some more competition to it, because these guys, like the players, they clearly care. They're stepping up to the competition. They want to get that money. They want to go to Vegas. They want to help out like the two-way contracts, the coaching staff, get that extra $500K. And look, $500K is a lot of money. Like, if someone offered me $500K, I'd do anything I can to go get that money. So I think it's fun. I'm very, very excited for this knockout stage.
Rohan, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was excited about this when we found out this off season that we're getting an in-season tournament, and for all the reasons that you said, right? And I know the whole question of like, oh, are the players going to be hyped about this? Are they going to be competitive when it comes to these games? Look, you put anything on the line, these guys, there's egos. There's guys who want to like make sure they show that they're the best in the league. Look, LeBron's going to want to win this thing. You tell me he doesn't want to add another notch to his belt. LeBron's team is in there. Lakers are in there, right? You got Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns. And I think the cool thing about this is that this could be previews for playoff rounds, right? Playoff series where it could be Knicks Bucks, right? In the Eastern Conference playoffs. It could be Bucks Celtics, could be an Eastern Conference type playoff series as well. You could throw the Pacers in there too. And so I like these games because you get a little added edge, as you noted, right? For between all these teams. And it's going to be single game elimination. That's intriguing. You got to come with your A game. I like all that type of stuff. So I'm excited for tomorrow. And let's get into this conversation between the Knicks and the Bucks. But first, I got to ask you, how are you feeling about the Bucks this season? You guys got Damian Lillard, now Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton's on the way back. How do you feel about your team up until this point?
Overall, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster for the Milwaukee Bucks this season. You'll see them play. It's like the shock factor of just having Damian Lillard in not just a Portland Trailblazers uniform, but a Milwaukee Bucks uniform. Bucks fans have been dreaming for years and years and years about what's the perfect point guard to realistically pair with Giannis. You want someone who has massive shooting gravity. And it's like, theoretically, the best possible fit next to Giannis is Steph Curry. Sure. The second best is Damian Lillard, because not only are those two, like Steph and Dame, some of the greatest shooters to ever play the game of basketball, it's because of that shooting that they create that three-point shooting gravity, while you also have one of the most dominant rim finishers in the entire world on your team at the same time. So it's like, pick your poison if you're a defense. That's realistically what they're going to have to do. So coming into the season, it's more like, oh my God, this is actually happening. Damian Lillard's a Buck. Who cares about anything else? This is the best duo in the NBA. But then this season comes, and even during our own season preview, I warned the listeners. I was like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's sort of think about how this is actually going to happen. They're not going to hit the ground running. I would be shocked if they did. There's going to be a lot of time that they need to take to figure things out, because not only are they trying to institute a brand new offense, they're instituting a brand new defense, and they have a brand new head coach, a first-time head coach in Adrian Griffin. So all of those factors together, you can't realistically expect everything to just coalesce right away. And that's sort of materialized on the court for the Bucks this season. We've seen a lot of up and down play. We haven't seen Giannis and Dame completely mesh yet. However, we do get glimpses of that, because this team, unfortunately, has played a lot of close games this year. And because of that, we've gotten to see this team operate in clutch time, and they are the best net rating by net rating clutch team in the NBA because they have Damian Lillard to go take over. Oh, by the way, you also have Giannis Antetokounmpo to take over. And against the Miami Heat in a game last week for the championship for Group B in the in-season tournament, you saw in that game when they closed out the Miami Heat, you had Giannis, you had Dame, you had Chris Middleton also coming into the mix, showcasing that, hey, by the way, in years past without Dame, I've been the guy who's sort of been the ball handler in these situations, these clutch time, big game situations. I'm here too. You have all three of these guys playing off of each other. So even though we haven't seen the best version of this entire team on the court yet, we have seen glimpses of it and it looks scary. So a long-winded way of answering your question is I'm intrigued by what I've seen by the Milwaukee Bucks this season.
Does the defense scare you at all? Like, I know the offense, like, it's not clicking, but yet you have the Bucks that are still top rated when it comes to offensive rating in the NBA. You know, they're currently fourth right now with a 118 offensive rating. But that defense, man, especially to start off the season, was awful. You know, Dame's not known as a defender on the perimeter. Chris Middleton coming off of injuries, looking a little step slower, but still getting into rhythm. Obviously, you got that paint protection with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez, but that perimeter defense has been shaky. So what are your feelings on that?
It's been like the rest of the season. It's been a little up and down. We started off this season. The Bucks were not playing a traditional drop defense, even though they had Brook Lopez. It took them around five or six games to be like, yeah, I think one of the players actually went to Adrian Griffin and was like, yeah, I need to listen to my guys. And Adrian Griffin said, yeah, we're going to play drop defense. The players want it. We're going to do it. We're going to get back to that. And immediately the Bucks defense started getting better. Now they're not like the defense they were. They're not a juggernaut defense that they have been in years past with Mike Budenholzer and Drew Holiday. They have not been that team yet. And because of, like you mentioned, Drew Holiday, the drop off between him and Damian Lillard on the defensive end is significant, to say the least.
Putting it nicely.
Yes. It's you're not going to get that defense. This is a complete paradigm shift for this team, because this team, when they won the title back in 2021, it was based on just hard-nosed defense. We are going to outgrind you. We are going to get possession after possession. We are going to make you work. We're going to operate in the trenches here to get every single possession. That's not how this team can operate anymore. They have to be a team where they are an offense first. We have to outscore our opponent. And as long as we can keep like an average defense, that should be enough, because their offense should carry them. I am a little concerned about the defense. We'll talk about it in regards to this matchup, but you can always on whatever app you want to use for Underdog Fantasy for this podcast, we'll say that you can always bet on the opposing point guard over if they're playing the Milwaukee Bucks, because it hits. It hits consistently. You have Kyle Lowry, and when he's 50 years old, his one knee, he'll still hit the over against the Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to happen, because they just, like, a backcourt of Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley just does not get it done on the defensive end. I've been someone who's been clamoring for Bossman 99 himself, Jay Crowder, to be in the starting lineup over Malik Beasley. Unfortunately, the Bucks are dealing with a lot of injuries. Pat Connaughton's out. Jay Crowder is out. One of their rookies who's made into the rotation, Andre Jackson Jr., he's been dealing with a back injury. So a lot of your wing rotation has sort of been like, okay, Malik Beasley, please. Like, you have your opportunity. You're still a starter. Make the best of it, because we need you to. There's no other option. So the defense is a little concerning, but as this team starts to get healthier, I could see them getting a little better if you add someone like Jay Crowder into the starting lineup over a Malik Beasley. But yeah, the backcourt defense does concern me.
Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning in for another Game of the Week preview. We are previewing the New York Knicks facing the Milwaukee Bucks. Joining me today is Rohan Kati. You can find him over at the Euro Step podcast covering the Milwaukee Bucks. Does an excellent job over there. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get a $100 up to a $100 match. So Rohan, you mentioned Jay Crowder being out, all this injury issue. What's it been like for Adrian Griffin to manage all of this right now? And what have you thought about him as a head coach?
It's been up and down. It's been up and down. I don't know how much of a discourse this sort of other outside communities sort of realized or saw this, but there was a huge thing about Adrian Griffin Should he be fired 7 games or 10 games into the season?
Wow.
Yeah, that was it was a big thing. Uh, most logical people said no because it's been 10 games. Uh,
7 games in. That's intense. I thought Knicks fans
yeah,
were
I
savage.
think it was
Woo.
like 10 games, I think, not 7, but it was still crazy. But it's been up and like that's indicative of what the Adrian Griffin experience has been like because they don't really have an identity yet. They're still trying to figure themselves out. And obviously, a lot of that blame from an outside perspective goes to the head coach. Like, if you're just a fan, like, it's like, oh, why isn't Adrian Griffin doing this? He was brought in, Bud was fired, and now we have Adrian Griffin. He was supposed to be an upgrade. Why isn't this working? And in some regards, that's fair. Like, that's the role that he was supposed to be in. He's supposed to be the upgrade over Mike Budenholzer. However, this is a completely different roster. They made the Damian Lillard trade a franchise altering trade about a month before the season started. You don't have time to realistically get a game plan together because, like I mentioned earlier, you have to shift everything, your offensive philosophies, your defensive philosophies. Everything has to change when you acquire Damian Lillard. So they're still figuring it out. One thing I will say about Adrian Griffin is that he will always listen to his players. I mentioned earlier about how they went back to a drop defense because they had players speak up and say, hey, we need to get back to this. This is more comfortable. He listened to them. And even in terms of like shot selection and IQ, he's not going to be on his players about that, but he will hold them accountable. You've seen instances, there have been instances where Giannis gets pulled out of a game and Adrian Griffin and him sort of get into it a little bit, like Giannis saying, hey, I don't want to come out of the game. Those two will have a conversation. He'll be like, no, you need a breather right now. Okay, we'll have this conversation. You made your point. I made my point. Go get back in the game. I'll listen to you at the end of the day, but there has to be that communication. So that's been very, very, very good to see, considering there has been some reporting coming out after Bud was fired that, yeah, maybe these players and coaching staffs didn't really get along too well. There wasn't a direct line of communication. So it's really, really nice to see that there is a direct line of communication between the players and the coaches, and they do seem to be getting along well. Now, in terms of actual X's and O's, we have yet to see how Adrian Griffin is going to be the master tactician that he was brought in to be. Like, he was a pioneer of the Giannis wall defense that Toronto implemented. He was responsible. Jimmy Butler gave him credit as a player development coach in his most improved player speech. Like, these are the type of things we want to see from Adrian Griffin. And again, I think it's just a little too early in the season to really see. Because this team, like I mentioned, they're still trying to find an identity. They're trying to shift from a defensive to an offensive minded approach. And that takes time. You can't really say that 20 games into the season.
For sure. And look, you got to give head coaches some time, especially this is a promotion. This is a massive promotion. You're going from, not only do you have to worry about the X's and O's, but you're managing player, right? Emotions and egos. You're managing your coaching staff as well. There's a lot more that goes into that as a head coach. So 7 games in, wild, but seems like everything's working out, especially with the direct line of communication that you're talking about. But I do have to ask this one question. What happened to the Terry Stotts situation with Adrian Griffin? Because that was interesting. It seemed like Adrian was just a little upset that Terry Stotts was crossing the boundary of like head coach and assistant coach. Can you go into a little bit more information about that?
Yeah, I think Eric Name of The Athletic actually had a great story about detailing what happened with that situation. So if I could paraphrase him a little, I think it was more of a situation where Terry Stotts wasn't really ready to be an assistant coach. He had been in the head coaching chair for so long. There was an incident at practice where Adrian Griffin wanted to gather all the assistant coaches after a practice sort of set or something and say, hey, we're going to have a little coaches meeting. Terry Stotts went off. It's like, no, I'm going to go talk to Giannis and Dame about the offense. Give me a minute. Adrian Griffin's like, no, we're having this coaching discussion here. Come over here. Terry Stotts is like, no, give me a minute. And then that ended up with like Adrian Griffin like yelling across the gym, like, hey, no, we're doing this now. And it's like sort of like, I think it was Terry Stotts not ready to be in the position where he's the underling to a head coach. He's used to being the guy in the chair making the big time calls, making the decisions, being the Adrian Griffin in that situation. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's like Terry Stotts not necessarily being ready to be in that role because he hasn't been in that role in decades. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. Would it have helped? Absolutely, to have Terry Stotts in here implementing an offense when he was the head coach of Damian Lillard for a long time. That would have helped a tremendous amount. Is it going to be the end of the world if he's not there? Doesn't really seem like it. It would have been nice to have, but Oh, well.
Okay. So with the coaching staff situated, Terry Stotts out of the way and believing that he's not ready to get into that role, that makes sense. Look, you've been a top guy leading the Portland Trailblazers. You took him to the playoffs. Makes sense. It's also an ego check for him, right? And like understanding, hey, this is not my role, even though it would have been great to have somebody with that type of experience to kind of usher in Adrian Griffin. I get like how both parties weren't necessarily jiving and understanding. Like it's two different tracks both those guys were on, so totally understandable. But I gotta ask this question: with everything going on in the Bucks for this season, do you see a trade happening by the trade deadline to improve this roster, especially on the defensive side?
I do. I do. One thing about the general manager of the Bucks, John Horst, he will always try and get you a defensive minded forward at the trade deadline, whether it's an actual trade or a buyout guy. It's been Jay Crowder, it's been PJ Tucker, it's been who was that? Marvin Williams as a buyout guy in the past. So he will always make sure he's going to be active at the trade deadline. We have a little nickname for we call him Trader John because it's just
There's
he's
Trader Danny, Trader John. Good God, can we get something more original than the Trader? The Trader nickname.
I agree. I don't like it, but it's just what it is. Like I have to go with it. I haven't thought of anything else, so I guess it's my fault. So unless I think about something better, I have to go with what other people are saying. But he will always make a move at the trade deadline. He will go and get someone. The problem with this is after including Grayson Allen in the Damian Lillard trade, they only have two sort of mid-sized salaries left, and that's Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton. Um, and whether fortunately or unfortunately, if you're who's depending on whose perspective you're on, Bobby Portis, though he started off strong this season, in the last 6 games, he's been under double-digit scoring 4 times out of the last 6 games after only doing that 1 time in the first 14 games. So it's been a little bit of a cold streak for Bobby. And we saw last season in the playoffs against Miami, he didn't really fare too well against the Celtics the previous year. He also didn't fare too well. It's put up or shut up time for Bobby Portis. Like if he wants to remain on this team, he's going to need to really, really put in a shift. And he has been. Like early in the season, he's shown that he can be an important piece to this team. Like going back to the title run, like he was a very, very important depth piece for them. So he's been, I think he finished like second or third in sixth man of the year voting last year. This is a guy who can be very, very productive, as Knicks fans know. So it'll be interesting to see because he's probably the most likely salary to go if there was a trade.
Well, let's remember second place last year for 6 man of the year was Emmanuel Quickly, so he had to be lower than that. Okay, we for Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis, we'll never forget the crazy eyed Bobby Portis revenge game against the Chicago Bulls. He did his thing. He's doing his thing out in Milwaukee. Salute to him. But salute to Knicks Nation for everyone tuning in for this Game of the Week preview. We got Rohan Kati. You can find him over at the Euro Step podcast covering the Milwaukee Bucks. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to share these links. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. So let's go to let's talk about Underdog Fantasy because Rohan especially gave us a little gem for tomorrow. Everyone out there, support our sponsor, okay? Because it is fun. If you want to add a new element to this game when you watch the Knicks and the Bucks tomorrow, or even when you watch the Knicks or any other team throughout this regular NBA season, even get into the playoffs, download Underdog Fantasy. They make the game that much more fun because you can choose all these different it's a good fantasy sports betting app. You can choose all these different players to choose from with different statistics and categories. Look, Rohan just gave us the gem for tomorrow saying choose the point guard who's going to and choose the higher for the number. So for tomorrow, you got 24.5 for Jalen Brunson. Rohan's telling you to take the higher on that. And look, we saw Jalen Brunson put up 45 against the Milwaukee Bucks earlier this season. I'm in agreement. So you can go download the app right now. Choose Jalen Brunson because, as Rohan said, it's going to happen. It's going to be that type of way. You know, Damian Lillard's not guarding anybody, but you can also choose other statistical categories, okay? And you get some combinations. You could choose assists, rebounds. You got blocks and steals, personal fouls. You can make it interesting. Choose higher on all of that. And to make it even better, make sure to use the promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match. Once again, that's KFTV. Use that promo code to get up to a $100 match. All right. Just had to take care of business for a second. But let's get back to this game. Let's get into the matchup now, Rohan. Let's do the X's and O's. Let's talk about stats and everything. Before I give you the key players of this game who I'm looking at, I gotta bring up this for you and let me know your thoughts on this. There are three statistics that I was looking at yesterday for the Knicks where they outperform the Bucks. One of them is when it comes to second chance points. Knicks are third in the league right now, averaging 16.3 points per game, with the Bucks who are 26 with 12.7. Another stat I got. Knicks are fifth when it comes to points scored off of turnovers, 18.7 per game compared to the Bucks who are 29th, 14.1. Knicks are 13th in limiting opponents' fast break points to only 14.2 compared to the Bucks who are 25th to 15.4. Now, if anything that's telling me is that the Knicks got a good chance of controlling the glass, pushing out the pace, which they do like to do this season with Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickly, and Dante DiVincenzo when we use that second unit. And doesn't seem like the Bucks are good when it comes to limiting those fast break points out in transition. So what do you think about those statistics I just gave you? How does that make you feel for tomorrow's game?
It makes me think about the defense of the Milwaukee Bucks, and it makes me think about Brook Lopez, because when you think about a lot of like second chance points, the first stat you talked about, a lot of the times it's dealing with Brook Lopez, how is he going to fare boxing out offensive rebounding opportunities, how is he going to hold up in those situations. So I think a lot of that comes down to him utilizing his size. We like to use this thing on the Eurostat. We call it, like the Bucks like to weaponize their size, and with their massive front line of Giannis and Brook. The thing is, then the Knicks, also have a massive center in Mitchell Robinson, who's going to be like one of the key players in this matchup, in my opinion, because he is going to be the guy who's consistently given Brook Lopez trouble in the past. He's been a center, like one of the only centers you can be like, yeah, I'm also as big as you are. I might be bigger, I'm longer, I'm quicker than you. Deal with it. And Brook has had trouble with that. Like Mitchell Robinson's got him a lot of times on offensive boards, and this Knicks team, they play physical, they play big. So it's going to be important for the Bucks to also play physical, play big, but it's going to be difficult because they start a lot of guys who don't really do that this season. Damian Lillard, Malik Beasley, Chris Middleton, not the most physical guys. At least not anymore with Chris. I yearn for the days when Chris Middleton was a 3-and-D guy. There was an incident at the Bucks' old practice facility where he slipped on a wet spot, tore his hamstring, and he's never been the same since. Wow. They were playing in like a church or something. That was their old they shared the practice facility with some pastors. It was crazy. They immediately got a new practice facility, and it's beautiful, but unfortunately that incident happened. But Chris Middleton, not a defensive stalwart as he was back in the day. So it's going to be a lot of Bucks trying to be physical, and that comes down to Giannis and Brook. Like Giannis and Brook are going to need to carry the load on that end because, like I mentioned earlier, guys like Jay Crowder, Pat Connaughton are out. So you're going to need to try to limit these second chance scoring opportunities. And that also comes into play with getting out in transition, trying to limit fast break points. What is Dame and Malik Beasley? What are they doing in transition on defense? Nothing. What are they going to do? Try and like their goal is to not foul, not give up and ones. Like I think the Knicks are going to feast. So it's going to be important for the Bucks to not really have long rebounding opportunities, not have Giannis just chuck up these weird airball threes that lead to transition because those bother me so much, and just try to limit these offensive rebounding opportunities because that leads into second chance points. And when you're on offense, when the Bucks are on offense, try to sort of get back on defense. If you have Giannis sort of trailing back, if you have him on the wing, try to have him run back and transition quickly because he's a game wrecker on the defensive end when he's actually like engaged and running back on defense. But if it's just Dame and Malik Beasley trying to get back, no, they got no shot. So I think those aspects of the game really, really play into the Knicks' favor.
And those are the aspects of the game that I had to point out because one, the Knicks have typically been a bad transition fast break team in the past. And according to like cleaning the glass last year, like the Knicks were still in like the bottom five until the Josh Hart trade. Then Josh Hart comes around, and then Knicks start to skyrocket because we know what Josh Hart likes to do: grab boards, push in transition. Then you add another guy this offseason, Dante DiVincenzo. You got Emmanuel quickly, who likes to push the pace as well. And so that team, and then you have RJ, who likes to get out in transition and who does a lot of his feasting with that second unit. So it's nice to see that. And that's one thing I didn't think the Knicks really utilized when they played the Bucks the first time this season, is that we had to do a lot of reliance on Jalen Brunson getting scoring in the half court offense. We didn't have RJ that game. So the second unit was missing a key component of what they do, because he's just like a battering ram when it comes to moving out transition, just in the half court. He just likes to get downhill. And then if you got to collapse on RJ, it opens up the 3-point shooting for everybody else on that team. So that component when it comes to transition sticks out to me. And then you talked about Mitchell Robinson, and I was actually impressed against the Bucks the first time, because in the past, you know, you talked about how he gives Brook Lopez a difficult time, but it's also Giannis too that gives Mitch a difficult time as well. And the fact that Giannis was driving and Mitch was still able to stand tall and take I guess Giannis's strong approach to just attacking the rim, that was impressive this season. So I liked how Mitch has improved this season. In my opinion, he's definitely a candidate for being on an all defensive team this year for the NBA. I think he's just playing at that level. The offensive rebounding is just on another level. He's leading the league. He's doing a phenomenal job. So that's why I had to bring up those components. Is there anything that you would think for the Bucks, though, that the Knicks should be on? Obviously, you got to worry about, as you mentioned earlier in the show, Giannis and Dame. Those guys are just two offensive engines by themselves. But is there anything that you would think that the Knicks should have to watch out for on the flip side?
I think one thing I didn't mention earlier when it comes to Giannis and Dame is the big talking point heading into the season is, oh, what's the Giannis Dame pick and roll going to look like?
Yes, I was going to ask you about that too.
That's going to be, it's going to be a game record. It's going to be the best play in basketball. Theoretically, it will. Giannis just isn't a great screener. He struggled with that at times. He just doesn't make contact on his screens. He didn't do that for the first couple games of the season. Now he is. Now he's starting to actually set good screens, starting to make good contact. And you can see Damian Lillard's 3-point percentage starting to creep up because he's getting more open shots, because he's getting more space because of those screens that Giannis is setting. And not only Giannis, the Dame Brook pick and roll has been really, really effective. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but that's almost been more effective than the Giannis Dame pick and roll, because Brook Lopez is just a massive, he's just a big dude, and he sets good screens. He gets caught a little bit on moving screens. It seems like there's been a little bit of a point
Who
of
doesn't
emphasis.
have a moving screen in the NBA nowadays?
Apparently Bam Adebayo, but that's a conversation for a different day.
Yes, this is where Bucks fans and Knicks fans unite.
Exactly. It never gets called. But it's going to be important to see that Giannis is setting better screens now, and he's starting to roll better, because Brook Lopez is a better roller, because that's what he does. He's not asked to do like 9,000 things with the basketball. So yeah, of course he's going to be a better roller than Giannis, who's going to be trying to see the entire court, make the right passes, ball, also trying to score at the rim, try to see if Dame is open, try to feed Dame. All these. Brook Lopez, when he gets the ball, he shoots, even though he has been passing a little bit more. Another thing you can potentially go higher on is Brook Lopez assists. It's at like 0.5 most games. But
Rohan's just dropping gems for all you. You all better download the Underdog Fantasy app and put these choices in.
I'm trying. I'm helping the people out here. I'm trying my best. But it's really important to see that Giannis is setting better screens now. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Knicks sort of play that matchup. How do you see those matchups playing out? Do you think it's gonna be the same or different compared to the first game of the season?
Well, now you just gave me the runway just to get into the key matchup of the game, Rohan. I appreciate this. And let me tell you about the key matchup of the game we got to talk about first. It is none other than the point guard positions himself, Jalen Brunson and Damian Lillard. This is where I'm going to as my key matchup of the game. Why? Because both these guys led each other's respective teams in scoring the last time they met up. You had Jalen Brunson, who dropped 45 points against the Milwaukee Bucks. And then you had Dame give a quiet 30, man. It was really quiet. It's the quietest 30 I've ever seen from Dame in my life. And he did a great job. Both players did a great job in that matchup. And that's in that first game. I'm looking at these two players because for similar reasons. They're both clutch players. Jalen Brunson, when he gets down to the fourth quarter, as you saw when he played the Bucks the first time, he'll keep you in it. He did it against the Miami Heat too, as a one-man band man, scoring 40 some odd points. Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semis. We know we know Dame time. We know Dollar Dame. We know he can pull up from the logo and drain a three when he needs to in order to put this game to seal the game or put into overtime. And these guys are going to be the head of the snake for both teams. They're going to be facilitating. They're going to be scoring. These are the guys in this matchup I'm looking forward to watching, because I think this is going to come down toe-to-toe offensively on both sides. You know, we're going to probably have Quentin Grimes guarding Damian Lillard. We'll see how effective that is. And then I'm not sure who you're going to have on Brunson. I guess you could, I don't know if you want, I don't even know who's it going to be? Beasley? Who would be guarding?
It'll probably be Malik Beasley. It was really funny.
Barbecue chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really funny coming into the season. You had Adrian Griffin talk about Malik Beasley, and he was saying like, yeah, he's going to be the guy that's taken the hardest matchups on the defensive end. And I'm like, really? That's the game plan? Like, woof. I mean, when your other backcourt mate is Damian Lillard, I guess you have to. But I will tell you what, I laughed at that. I laughed at that comment. He's done better than I thought. He's done better than I thought. I still want Jay Crowder to replace him when he's healthy in the starting lineup. One, because of the defense, and two, I think Malik Beasley's offense will be more helpful coming off the bench, especially when you have Giannis and Dame in your starters, but that's a different conversation. I do think that Malik Beasley, is he going to be a massive positive on the defensive end? No. Is he going to be the worst defensive player? No, and that's a win. You take that. Maybe that's more indicative of the Bucks' current state right now, but I wouldn't be surprised. A name that's not really known outside Bucks circles, Andre Jackson Jr. I mentioned him earlier. He is coming in as a rookie out of UConn and just playing defense. I'll tell you what. He needs to control a little bit of the fouls. I think if Jalen Brunson gets him, like he'll sort of bait him. He'll like put on some vet savvy for him, because it's like, yeah, let me show this youngster around, that sort of thing. But I do think that Andre Jackson Jr., he's big and he's also quick, and he just knows how to play like hard-nosed defense. He will press you full court. He will just be an irritant. He won't shoot the basketball inside the arc, which is a massive issue. He will have one foot in front of the other when shooting a three, which is a massive issue. But I'll tell you what, he will play some solid defense for like 20 minutes a game. So if he is ready to go, he missed the last game due to a back tightness, back spasm, something like that. And he's questionable, I believe, for this matchup. But if he is ready to go, I would not be surprised to see Andre Jackson Jr. getting some run against Jalen Brunson, because the Bucks just desperately need some guard defense.
Okay, that's interesting. Looking forward to that matchup. Some other matchups that I have that we got to go through is the Randall and Giannis matchup. I think that will be interesting because Randall didn't have a great outing first time this year, and he was trying to get into offensive rhythm. Now he's back in offensive rhythm. He's not. I hope he doesn't do what he did against the Bucks the first time, which is settle for poor mid-range jumpers, settling for a lot of threes. He took 9 threes that game, which he hasn't been great at shooting the three ball. I mean, he shot great his first All-NBA All-Star season. He shot, I think, close to 40%. Since then, it hasn't gotten close. Yes, last year he shot 34%. He's still working his way back up right now. It's over 30%, but he's not that lethal three-point shooter that he was a few seasons ago. Now I'm looking for him, and what he has done this season is get downhill, use his physicality, get his back to the basket, attract double teams, find his guys on the perimeter, find guys cutting. I think his facilitating has been much better this season, which something that I've been asking for of him since he's been a Knick is to improve his passing and looking for his teammates. He's doing that now. I hope he brings that mentality to his game, because we need him as much as we need Brunson in order to keep up. And then you know what you're going to get from Giannis. I'm just curious, like, defensively, is he going to be ready for that? Because Giannis can start at the top of the perimeter and just bully his way in. And Mitch, obviously the safety valve, but you have to give a little bit of resistance to. And maybe for Julius, that's starting to be more physical on the offensive side first, and then starting to see if you can, wear Giannis down a little bit when it comes to him getting on the offensive side. What do you think about that matchup?
I think it's going to be interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that Julius Randle, when it just comes to like massive teams, I mean, not necessarily the Cavs, because I wouldn't consider them a massive team. I'd consider them a long team. They're
They're a
kind
long
of
team and they're more of a finesse team. They're not really physical. Like you think about
no,
Giannis, you think about Brook. Those guys can get physical.
yeah. So it's not necessarily like a tall front court. It's like a strong front court. I think last year's first round series, Knicks Cavs really showed that it's not the length that matters, it's the strength that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Bucks have the length and the strength, which is why Julius Randle has sort of had a bit of troubles against the Bucks in the past. But likewise for Giannis, like we've seen that, um, like in that last game, what do you have, 22 points or something, which is like way below average for Giannis in his career. But
Yes.
one thing that we have to keep an eye on is Brook Lopez. I mentioned him on the defensive side earlier. On the offensive end, Brook Lopez has probably been their third best player this season for the Milwaukee Bucks. It hasn't been Chris as he works his way back. It's been Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez has been dominant. He tied his career high with like 13 years later, 39 points like 2 weeks ago. It was crazy. Um, he's been more and more involved in this Bucks offense, and it'll be interesting to see how either that's a strength for the Bucks or if that's limiting for the Bucks. Because if Giannis commands those doubles, if he gets past Julius Randle, draws the help from Mitchell Robinson, can Brook Lopez be an outlet for it? Or are they going to feed Brook Lopez too much and then he kind of gets swallowed up by Mitchell Robinson? It's going to be interesting to see how they use Brook Lopez in this matchup, whether he's going to be a focal point of the offense or whether he's going to be a release valve. If he's a release valve, I think he can be very, very, very effective, because if Mitchell Robinson is drawn out, then you just get Brook Lopez against anyone not Mitchell Robinson is just smaller than Brook Lopez. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of happens, because like I said, if he ends up getting the ball a lot and Mitchell Robinson's on him, it's going to be difficult for him to finish, because like I mentioned, Mitchell Robinson gives him a lot of trouble. It's crazy. We talk a lot about this matchup, and the one player I always come back to is Mitchell Robinson, because he's such a big dude and he's quick, he's skilled, he's just a problem.
Yeah, and look, we gotta give a little shout out to Isaiah Hartenstein too, because he's a good
Oh
backup
yeah.
center to what Mitch does. And for a guy who struggled last season to start off with to be in a Tom Thibodeau type system, uh Hartenstein has really lived up to the challenge and has been even better this season, better than last season, which is even impressive because he was good last season as a backup big, and now he's doing even a greater job. But you talk about bringing it back to Mitch Robinson, so I guess we can talk a little bit about this. The one thing I will say for Mitch is that, and I think you pointed out, if you can bring Mitch away from the paint, which is Brook Lopez shooting threes, right? If you do that, then it just opens up everything. And that's kind of my biggest fear, is that that's where Mitch, it's not that he has trouble, it's that that's where the Knicks defense has trouble, because he is that anchor. He is that paint presence. And if you take Mitch away from that, and when you look at what Brook Lopez did last time against the Knicks, he shot 4 for 10 from downtown. So he shot 40%. And Brooks is going to take a lot of threes. That's the one thing about Brook. He's going to take a lot of threes. And I'm curious if they're going to allow, I think one thing you got to figure out is just, I don't know how it's going to work, but I would rather have Randall try to guard Brooks threes than take Mitch out of the paint, because you don't need that runway, especially for a guy like Dame Lillard who can get downhill as well. And that then it just starts to become a more offensive game. And the Knicks offense, as much as it's been clicking, it's going to be tough to keep up with the offensive power of the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's where, for me, if it comes back to Mitchell Robinson, that's my biggest fear for this team. But moving along, we got to salute to Knicks Nation once again. Thank you all for tuning in for a Game of the Week preview. We got Rohan Kati once again of the Euro Step podcast to break down this Knicks and Bucks game. Make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, and make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys and share these links and videos. All right, get into the last portion of this breakdown, of this preview. Let's get to the bench. And I need to talk about the bench, because I think this is where the Knicks' strength will come in, especially with all the injuries that you talk about. No Pat Connaughton. You got no Pat Connaughton. You got no Jay Crowder. And the Knicks bench in the first matchup, we didn't have RJ Barrett, even though he is a starter. Like I said, he runs with that second unit. And quickly had a good outing, but we didn't get anything really from Dante DiVincenzo. And then when you put Josh Hart into the starting rotation as well, it changes the entire dynamic of how that Knicks offense works for the starters and how that Knicks second unit works. So in this game, seems like everyone's healthy to as of right now, as we record this on Monday at 12:19 p.m. Eastern time. So for me, I'm looking at the bench unit because I think that's where the Knicks can find most success. And that's where they found success in their most recent matchup against the Toronto Raptors, where you have Dante DiVincenzo just going 7-9 from downtown, Josh Hart giving you 15 consecutive points. I'm not expecting that same type of production again, but I'm expecting this bench unit to really come in here and do some work. And I'm expecting a bounce back game for Quickly because he was a little quiet last week as well. What do you think about the bench matchup?
I think it's interesting. I'll focus in on Dante because he's old friend of the Milwaukee Bucks, Dante
Revenge
DiVincenzo.
game. Do we get a revenge game? Because we didn't get that last time.
We did. He tried. He definitely tried. One thing that he's sort of correct me if I'm wrong. One thing he struggled with the Bucks, and I haven't kept up with it, was a lot of finishing at the rim has sort of been an issue for Dante. And he'll take shots outside the arc. And one thing this Bucks team can do with Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley, they may not be the strongest guys. They're quick. They'll run out. Uh, they'll go catch up to shooters on the perimeter, run them off the perimeter. So if you force him to sort of get into the paint, is that still an issue for Dante?
What? What's it for? What? Trying
to finish
what?
In the paint?
Yeah, he can't do that. I mean, that's why I'm like stuttering. Like you're really asking this question. Like he can't do that. Come on. Like he can drive and he could find and find guys on the perimeter, but Dante finishing around the rim.
Okay,
no. Which is why when he tried to dunk on Brook Lopez, I was like, "What are we doing here, bro? You're trying to dunk on Brook Lopez? What's happening today?"
I just want to make sure, just in case he'd figured it out, but maybe not. But no. They will close out on shooters, this Bucks team. So if you can try to limit those guys, try to get them in the paint. Maybe Dante's the one guy you want doing that. But if you get like guys like Quickly, get guys like Josh Hart, those guys will play a lot smarter in the paint. Like Manuel Quickly is the one guy I've wanted on the Bucks for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And it's like not a long time because it's not like been a long time, but for the last like 2 years. But he's a guy who really, really impresses me with his decision making and sort of his ability to like operate inside the perimeter. So if he's a guy who can go out there and sort of give the Bucks trouble in that mid-range area, because with the Bucks playing drop defense again, it's the same sort of issues that they've had in years past. Even if you have a guy like Drew Holiday, you're still going to give up a lot of floaters. You're going to give a lot of mid-range shots because you're playing drop defense, because Brook Lopez is sagging towards the rim. So if the Knicks bench, like their bench unit is sort of poised to take advantage of that, I could see them giving a lot of trouble to the Bucks.
Okay. And Quick's decision-making has gotten better over the years. He still hasn't seen so much this season as last year where he'll just randomly pull up for three, and I'm like, we could have set up an offensive set. Sometimes the 2-for-1s that he likes to do, I'm like, not really what I'm feeling right now, especially when you got a defender just closing out on you. But Quick has gotten better this year. His playmaking's definitely improved. It's nice to hear that somebody appreciates Emmanuel Quickly, because we have a division in this fan base about how great Quickly is and how much we should appreciate him and all that type of stuff. So we'll see, man. And look, he didn't get an extension this year. He's going to be a restricted free agent. We'll see what happens, but love Quickly on this team, man. He's just a gamer, and you can't change it. Every time he's on the court, he's just a positive. Defensively, offensively, I like what he does. My biggest thing next for the bench is like, who's stopping Bobby Portis? And Bobby Portis.
That's the answer.
Yeah, Bobby. Yes, Bobby Portis will stop Bobby Portis. I mean, he didn't have a great game against the Knicks. He went 2 of 10 for the last time. But the thing is that you talk about the matchup for the Bucks and the Knicks, and it's you got the height, you got the strength, and that's, I mean, Bobby Portis adds that because he's coming off the bench. We don't have a true 4. We have Josh Hart playing the 4 right now for us. So defensively, that's going to be an issue because height advantage, just shooting over somebody. Strength wise, he can go back to the basket. For me, I'm thinking like we need to figure out a way to slow down Bobby Portis if he gets into his bag. I know he didn't last game, but that's the guy who I'm looking at for the Bucks bench, because you don't have Jay Crowder, but Bobby Portis can still do his thing.
Yeah, for sure. Bobby Portis, like for all I've talked about, he's still a bucket getter in the simplest sense. Like he will go out there, he will get those face up jumpers, but he'll also do a little post rig back to the basket. He likes to catch on the baseline, sort of size up his opponent, and then either post up, just sort of take a face up jumper. One thing that's really sort of troubled him is like just getting those quick doubles when he gets on the baseline, because you essentially have two extra defenders in both sidelines if he's catching it sort of in the corner on the baseline. So he doesn't make the pass right away, which allows for a recovery from the guy who's doubling. And I could see like if a guy like Josh Hart's coming with a double, just from like the weak side, like, yeah, it's going to be an issue because he's going to need to make a decision. And Bobby Portis, his decision making hasn't been the cleanest when he's coming when it comes to passing out of doubles. So that's one thing where the Knicks could really take advantage. But you're right. The Bobby Portis matchup is going to be really, really important because he is just bigger than most guys on the bench, and that's his biggest strength. He's big, he's quick, he'll run fast in transition too. He's one of the guys who can actually like get back and sort of deter shots at the rim in transition. It's just a shame because he's not the most defensively gifted player. He tries his best. I'll give him that. He tries so hard out there. It's just tough sometimes. Thankfully, Adrian Griffin does not play him in a drop defense because that is a disaster. They sort of like to do like high hedges with Bobby because he can recover fairly quickly. So it's good to see that. But yeah, Bobby in terms of his offensive load is going to be fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely see about that. And look, we experienced the Bobby Portis defense on the Knicks, especially because we had the joke everyone said that year we had 4 power forwards. We had too many power forwards between Randall, Bobby P, Marcus Morris, and I don't want to go down that list anymore. We're in a good place right now. I don't need to go through with that. But here's the X factor of my game, the X factor, and I think he could be a consistent X factor throughout the rest of the season. It's RJ Barrett for the Knicks, and I'm looking at him and how he's going to handle the Chris Middleton matchup, because I do think that's who he has to guard defensively, and I think that is who will be guarding him defensively. And so can RJ, who's been struggling a little bit since he came back from a migraine issue, he started off the season really well, and that's been a big issue for RJ in the past, which is he gets off to these slow starts, then he'll figure out in like December, like end of November, beginning of December, like get on these hot streaks, then get cold again. But he started off the season strong, and then just as soon as we needed him, he got a migraine, and now he's back to trying to figure his way after missing an entire week of basketball earlier in the season. But him against Middleton is another matchup for my X factor. That's the X factor matchup, because I feel like that's how the game could be had for either the Bucks or the Knicks, is that if RJ shows up with his A game, then it puts the Knicks obviously in a great situation offensively to defeat the Bucks. And then for Milwaukee, conversely, like if Middleton plays how Middleton can play at his level, and it looks like he's been getting into that type of rhythm, that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because in one way this matchup is a little bit skewed because Chris Middleton is not he's just on the defensive end, it's not holding up super well. That's one benefit to playing a drop defense more, is you can sort of funnel guys into the paint, where you have guys like Brook Lopez and then Giannis as a backline helper. It's interesting for that because like Chris Middleton on the defensive end, I think RJ Barrett's going to have every opportunity. I think he's going to have opportunities to really get to the rim, score, try to take guys off the dribble. If you're going to take a guy off the dribble on this Bucks team, it's Chris Middleton, or it might be Malik Beasley, honestly. But we shall see with that. But Chris Middleton, one thing that he can do, like you mentioned, he's sort of getting into his bag a little bit more offensively as he sort of builds up his minutes this season, coming off offseason surgery and just like a slew of injuries these last couple of years. He's sort of ramping back up. It almost feels like he's in a perpetual ramp up state, which is just really unfortunate. I feel so bad for Chris, but it's just he's starting to get his scoring back. He's starting to get his 3-point ball back, because he started off really poorly. He's not taking a ton of threes. At least he wasn't. Now he's starting to take more threes. In their last game against the Hawks, the Bucks, and Chris Middleton took a lot more threes. But again, that is the Atlanta Hawks. So take that as you will. But Chris Middleton, one thing he will do is if he has a smaller guy on him, and RJ Barrett is a little bit, I think he's a little bit smaller than Chris Middleton, because Chris Middleton, like, I think one of my biggest qualms with Chris is that, like, dude, play like you're 6'9" because you're 6'9. And it's like, yeah, he plays like he's 6'5. But if you can just like utilize your size, he will perpetually back someone up on the baseline, take a little fadeaway jumper. He looks like he's Kobe or Jordan doing it, but he constantly does it. We used to joke on Bucks Twitter. We used to call it the tough. Used to call Chris the tough shot express because he would always take like these crazy tough shots. But that's just how he's built his career. And when you see him sort of posting up a guy on the baseline, back to the basket, sort of working, taking a little fadeaway, more often than not, it's actually money because that's his shot. That's what he's worked on. If you get a smaller guy on him, he will go to work. He's not going to necessarily like break you down off the dribble with some crazy handle package or anything. He's not going to go slice to the rim and just dunk on someone. That's not his game. He's going to methodically break you down. He's going to use slow finesse moves to really get you. And if you're smaller than him, which RJ Barrett is, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult assignment. Do I think RJ Barrett wins that matchup? I do, because he's quicker, he's younger, he's faster, more athletic. He can do more on the court currently right now than Chris Middleton, and can play better defense than Chris Middleton can right now. But I do think you're right. I do think that's an important matchup, because if it's a wash in terms of like, oh, RJ's going off and Chris is going off, I think that's a win, because I consider Chris to be sort of the canary in the coal mine for this Bucks offense. If Chris is not doing well, that's a signal that this Bucks offense is not operating at a high level. Because if defenders are going at Giannis and then recovering to Dame, the one guy who's like going to be left wide open is Chris Middleton. And if Chris Middleton cannot be converting in those matchups, that's a sign that the Bucks offense isn't doing very well. But if it is a wash and Chris is doing well and RJ is doing well, I think that's a win for the Bucks, because it means the Bucks offense is operating on all cylinders, which is just unstoppable.
For sure. And then the last thing I'll say is like for RJ, like I think the biggest thing for him is like not getting those blinders on. And I think Chris, as an underrated defender as he has been, even when he was at fully healthy, is that he knows how to like kind of lull guys into making mistakes. Like he's not going to overpower you, but he's very savvy enough. And that's something I've liked about Middleton. I liked his offensive game, like when he was like back in his prime, I'll say now. And he also had this way of just like lulling opponents into making mistakes. That's something that I always respected about Middleton. But yeah, man, Rohan, I appreciate you coming on and helping break down this game. I want to know what your thoughts on how this game's gonna pan out. Are we gonna get down to the crunch time, clutch minutes from both of these teams? Because Dame, you already mentioned the clutch shots, clutch shooting from this team earlier in the show, and then Brunson likes to do Brunson things when it gets down to 2 minutes or within that 5-minute span. What do you think? How do you think this all plays out?
I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a close game again. I mean, last time, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Bucks had a big lead. New York sort of climbed its way back into that game. Jalen Brunson, like you mentioned, 45 points. It's going to be a fun matchup. Let me tell you what, like these matchups are fun. We're going to get Celtics Pacers tonight. That's going to be fun. But Bucks, I think the Eastern Conference IST matchups are really, really, really fun. And like you mentioned at the top, potentially playoff previews. But I think it's going to be close. If it's a close game, I do give the edge to the Bucks, because they have, I believe, 2 of the top 4 fourth quarter scorers in the league in Giannis and Dame. And they have those closers. But I honestly wouldn't be shocked if it comes down to a close game and the Knicks sort of bully their way into position. I lean Bucks. I'll say, if you want me to make an actual prediction, I'll say Knicks and Bucks. I'll say this game ends Bucks by 3. I'll say it's really close.
Sounds about right.
I think it's going to be really close.
It sounds about right. I mean, every time the Knicks and the Bucks face off, even in years past, it always is a close game. I'm in agreement with you. I think it's going to come down to a 2-3 point game between these two teams. I'm going to take Knicks. I think the Knicks are going to come back with revenge. Obviously, you're going to take the Bucks. I'm going to take the Knicks. No shocker there. Although some guests decide to shock me, especially if it's a lowly team. Like if it's a lowly team, like someone who's covering the Pistons, like, and they can't even say it with a straight face. They're like, Knicks are going to probably win this one. There's guys in the past who are like, the Knicks are gonna, the Knicks are gonna win this one. Even when we cover the Bulls, are like, Knicks are gonna win this one. It's like, thank you for giving respect to a good team finally. But this game, I'm looking for revenge on the Knicks side, man, because it was only Jalen Brunson out there. Yeah, we had good shooting from Grimes. that night as well. We had a good outing from quickly off the bench, but Knicks are healthy. I think they got to face the Bucks. We're facing each other 5 times this season. That's a lot. First of all,
It is a lot.
We got, and we haven't even talked like, we could come back to this for, the mini series that we have towards Christmas, because that's another thing that we got going on. So, but I'm expecting Knicks to come back for revenge in this one. I'm expecting Randall to have a good game. I know Brunson's going to do what he does best. I think Randall shows up in this one in a big way, and he needs to, because he has the whole playoff lackluster performances, and I think in a high profile game, look, it's going to be nationally televised. Spotlights are going to be bright. You're on the road. I think Julius is going to step up for this one, and that's how I think it's going to have to be done in order for the Knicks to edge this one out. But it will come down to 3 points. It's going to come down to 3 points either way.
If it's a 3-point line, it can go either way. It can go either way. Like, yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Knicks by 3. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
For sure. But Rohan, appreciate you for coming on the show. Please let our listeners know where they can find you if you got anything up and coming that we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, you can find us on the Eurostep podcast. Check out all of our stuff at gspn.info website. Lead you to everything. But yeah, we'll have a bunch of things covered for the in-season tournament. Let's say if the Bucks do lose this matchup, it doesn't matter. But if they do win, we'll have previews, post-game pods for every game for the in-season tournament. We're treating this like we do the playoffs. So we do that for the playoffs. We'll do that for the in-season tournament. Hopefully, I'm probably saying this to the wrong crowd, but hopefully we don't stop here. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Knicks did win this game. It'll be fun for sure. But yeah, Eurostep Podcast, Eurostep Podcast Network. Find all our stuff at gspn.info. And thank you for having me. Truly.
Of course, Rohan. Appreciate you for coming through and helping me preview this game and giving us all the intel on the Milwaukee Bucks. And KFTV, Knicks Nation, you all know what to do. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to share these links. Make sure to support the channel. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe already. Also, if you can't catch us live, you know what you can do. You can download it. You can download the show on any audio listening platform, Apple, Spotify, whatever it may be. So you can go make sure to check it out there, so that way you get ready for all these games with all these previews. Also, make sure to check out KnicksFanTV.com. We're covering the game in written format as well. We got a bunch of talented writers over there as well. So make sure to support KnicksFanTV.com. Also, make sure to support our sponsors, Underdog Fantasy, okay? Make sure to use that promo code KFTV to get up to a $100 match. And look, salute to the franchise channel members for tuning in today. I see JJ's in here. I see, who else do we got in here? We got Lauren Smith in here. Shout out to you. We got JRose712. Shout out to you. Shout out to everyone tuning in today. Shout out to all of you. Shout out to everyone from Knicks Nation. Salute to all the mods. We appreciate all you. We'll catch you later for tomorrow for play-by-play and post-game action as always. And make sure to tune into the NBA report today at 3 p.m. All right, Knicks Nation. We'll catch you later. We out.